Hi, welcome back to Evergreen Perspective. This is part 2 of my conversation with Vancouver City Councilmember Ty Stober. In part 1, we covered growth, development, and housing here in Vancouver. Today, we're diving into transportation, the I-5 bridge debate, homelessness, and Ty's vision for the city's future. So let's jump back in. Yeah, I'd like to pivot here to a bridge, the I-5 bridge. Why do you think there's such a partisan divide between having a light rail and not having a light rail? I mean, obviously, this I-5 bridge project in one iteration or another has been in the works for decades. And, you know, I had a county council member on the last episode, and we chatted a little bit about, you know, here we are at the 5-yard line, and you know, we're stuck on what play to call. How did that issue become so partisan between light rail and no light rail?
That is a national conversation I can't totally, all I can do is give suppositions for and take it back to this tremendous growth that we're going through as a county. And there is understandable discomfort from people who have been here a long time about all this growth that's happening. And I think in some ways that light rail continues to reinforce that. There is also, in less recent history, the history of Clark County dramatically changed in 1984 with the opening of the Glenn Jackson Bridge. And, thousands and thousands of people started flooding into what is now East Vancouver and points further north. And that first wave of people that came across the bridge, many of them came across the bridge because they said, I don't want to be in Portland anymore.
Right. Let me ask you, do you know, just as a sidebar, was there a huge opposition to that bridge at the time?
Oh, I highly doubt it.
Okay.
But I was, I remember as a child, my dad used to have an office in Seattle, and we would drive him to the airport when he would fly up there. And I remember the freeway ending at Foster Road. And I remember at some point in my childhood being taken to see the bridge under construction. Washington struggled to get their side built. Oregon built theirs, but Washington struggled to get their side built. I think there was a much different, this is still the late 70s, early 80s. There was a much different view about infrastructure in general at that point in time. I think infrastructure was viewed much more optimistically. Infrastructure was viewed without consequence, maybe is another way to put it.
Sure.
And so I don't, though I do know that prior to that bridge getting built, there was controversy over where the bridge was going to go. And there was discussions about a bridge much closer to downtown. And so this quote unquote third bridge conversation is actually also decades and decades old.
Right.
But you have all these people come across and say, I don't want to be Portland. And that attitude continued to pervade. And I didn't come across because I didn't want to be Portland. I came across because I got a job here, right? I was here because I wanted a job, and I was turning around and driving back to Portland as a 20-something. I was driving into Portland for personal and professional growth because nothing was being offered to me as a 20-something in Vancouver. And I, the first time we voted on it, and I think it was 95, I voted yes because for me it was a no-brainer. I mean, I go to Portland all the time. Of course, I'd want this thing.
Right.
But I think that's also part of it is I don't want to be part of Portland. I don't want to be part of tied to Oregon. Is another key part of that. The people who, I think an argument like the crime train, I think that's more a red herring argument to try and build opposition than what people necessarily truly think. I think it's much more about don't want to be Portland. But the thing is, we're a much different city. So when about growth, I came on council with 174,000 people in Vancouver. And this year, 10 years later, the state said we're at 208,000. So 30,000 people in 10 years. That's a different city. And as the mayor talks about, continually in talking to people who don't know that there was a previous attempt, don't know about everything blowing up in 2013. And so there's re-education that has to happen. And, there's definitely still that anti-light rail, but there's a lot of people who it's just, the arguments don't carry as much weight anymore because we're just a much different place than we were back then.
Right. And so let me ask you a question. Maybe you can clear it up. Because I hear conflicting out in the community when talking to folks. Is the light rail directly tied to the additional federal funding, or is it not really? And the real is it's just tied to the actual bridge and the transportation piece itself.
So bridges are expensive, and you need to pull in every dollar possible to make that project happen. And transportation funding, public transportation funding, is a key source of funding to help make the whole thing happen. It is a requirement that we have some sort of public transportation on the bridge. So that's a requirement, but it's a essential portion of the funding. And if that goes away, that's a lot more money that we've got to, because there's, all these different things happening, and how do you write an expense off? Well, okay, we have this support structure. Here's my camera. This support structure underneath the deck, and now we get to write off the cost of this support structure that exists one way or the other. We've got to have this support structure, but we get to write the support structure off to a different pile of funds, source of funds. So it would be a bigger lift for us to move forward without it being a component.
Got you. Yep. That's it continues to be. Are we ever going to get this thing built? What's your thought?
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful, and there is the potential that dirt will be turned next year. So, we're as what your previous guest said, we're on the 5-yard line. It's 11:55 p.m. We're We're right here. But it blew up last time at 11:55 p.m. at the 5-yard line.
Right.
From a state political standpoint, guardrails were put in place so that it wouldn't get derailed from either state again. And now we're.
Is that the only sticking point right now as far as life goes? Is it we do light rail or we don't do light rail, and there's some members that say, "Hey, we're not doing it," and is that the last piece?
The big one right now is it a lift bridge or not?
Right.
I
thought we decided it wasn't going to be a lift bridge.
Mm-hmm. And now the federal government is messing in ways that they don't understand. And that's the other thing people don't understand is how many different parties come into play. Right? Now, it's not just two states, it's multiple federal agencies and departments, and it's the Army Corps of Engineers, and it's the Coast Guard, it's Department of Transportation, it's so many different players are coming into play. On the transportation side, Vancouver is committed to making the public transportation happen. And there are multiple contingencies to make sure that happens. The best contingency is our public transportation agency, who does transportation, does public transportation. The best scenario is that they are the fiscal sponsor for the maintenance and operations on the north side of the river. There are other contingencies.
Which is very pricey, right?
In 2013, dollars, our commitment to light rail was supposed to be $2 million a year. And if you take and extrapolate that out, that $20 million figure that gets thrown around is not $20 million north of the river. Okay, it is not north of the river. $20 million is an M&O for capacity on the entire line. And one of the frustrations has been is C-Trans hands have been tied about engaging and on this topic to question the numbers. And so consequently, the city has had to step in and play that role of challenging TriMet to show their math and really prove this out. But it is not $20 million north of the river. This is $20 million covers the M&O from, we'll say at least from Expo Center north, but there's even a potential that TriMet padded the budget more than that. So it's that's where this negotiation has to happen about what really are the true costs in Clark County, in Vancouver.
Right.
So, but it's not $20 million.
That's good to know. So I'd like to do a little segment. We'll lighten it up here a little bit. I'd like to do a little segment, kind of your welcome to politics moment.
Yeah.
Right. So what's a moment? It could be, amusing, funny, stressful, whatever you want it to be. But that one moment when you realize, like, I'm in politics now.
Yeah. So I'll talk about the aha, which is not a fun aha to come to. Early on, somebody, a woman in the community reached out to me, an African American woman in the community reached out to me and said she was being harassed by our police department and she wanted to talk to me about it. And I of course I did. What I discovered, however, was mental illness was coming into play. So she had developed this theory in her brain that police and public works were working together in order to cause her pipes to explode. And that was a realization of how much mental illness exists in our community, and this huge lack of support that we have around that issue. And our police department stepped in, was able to locate relatives in California and reunite this woman with relatives in order to so she could have a support network to help her through her struggles. But that was the first, but over and over again, I've run into these mental health issues that just really are shocking and devastating, of the toll that they play on individuals' lives. And we're a natural place where that gets expressed. And so that was it was definitely a big aha moment for me.
Sure, man, that's tough. And I think, we know mental health issues, are rampant across the U.S. at so many various levels. I think when we have the kind of that wage inequality or that wealth gap, I think we're only going to continue to see kind of those pieces.
Healthcare gap.
Yeah, it's getting
mental health.
Not getting any better.
Yeah, no.
No, it's not.
So that was not a light. You said lighten it up.
No,
that was not.
No, we didn't like that. We didn't lighten it up at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. Let me ask you this question. What do you feel is the thing that most people misunderstand about city government as a whole? What is it that people are like? Because I think, you hear it a lot, and as I've continued to enter the public sphere much, much more and talking to a lot more folks, I hear a lot of loud voices, about there's a lot of angry people out there about a lot of different things. How do you separate the noise from those that have valid concerns? Not that the loud people aren't valid. I'm not going to devalue what they have to say, but, there's a lot of really, crushing from kind of this megaphone in from both sides. How do you discern what's real from a standpoint of, you got a valid point. How can we take action on, X, Y, Z?
So one thing is the city council deals in policy. We don't deal in specifics, and so I'm always being challenged to think. I'm always challenged to think about: am I hearing something from you that I can turn into policy? I don't like that my neighbor is growing something. And so how do I discern what's a policy that can be extrapolated and applied across the city? And or is this something that's you specific? In which case, here, let me get you to resources that can help you. And okay, so there's one. Two is I have a North Star. My North Star is I want a place where people can live. I want a place where people can walk and feel safe and get their self-fulfillment. And that North Star is going to make a lot of people uncomfortable because that requires change, and change is uncomfortable. And so I'm also listening for, and one, you just need to listen, right? Because a lot of times people are amped up, and I go into the conversation going, oh shit, this is going to be horrible. And by the end of it, they're like, thank you for listening. Like, they just need to be able to vent. But are you venting about something that is going to help health and safety, housing affordability, making people feel fulfilled and engaged? Or are you venting about something that's, I don't want my concept of the city to change? Because it's going to change. The city's going to change.
Right. Change is inevitable.
Change is inevitable. And even if we don't change zoning, your next door neighbor, you could hate, right? You could still hate your next door neighbor, even if we don't change zoning. So I can't guarantee a bubble of happiness around you, but I need to be working towards housing people, making sure that more people don't fall out the bottom, because there's always going to be somebody with money moving into the community. And how do we make sure that that doesn't push somebody out the bottom? So there's another, side thing back to the housing thing, is like, what only thing that's getting built is expensive housing. Guess what? We need expensive housing, because if somebody doesn't have expensive housing to buy, they find something that the best thing they can find, and everybody gets knocked down, right? And eventually somebody falls out the bottom, and that's. And I want.
Yeah, I just had that conversation with my wife. We were out running, and there's a new development over here, and we was talking about the prices of these homes. And she's like, "Well, how's that gonna help?" And we started talking about it, and that was it, right? If they're gonna buy at this price level, that creates more. It's a stack up effect, and it's gonna create more affordable housing as people move along. So you're right. Well, we do need all levels, certainly. Although, we definitely got to continue to focus on building that housing, the affordable housing.
Yeah, because too many people, but not. So I live in one of the historic neighborhoods of the city, and if you go back 30 years, this was not a neighborhood you wanted to live in, right? This is where, when you talk about, there was a time when Esther Short Park had prostitutes and drug dealers in it. They lived in my neighborhood, right? The neighborhood I live in now, that's where they lived, because this was the cheap place to live, right?
Gotcha.
And so when I hear my neighbors complain about seeing homeless people, I'm like, but you're living in the house that they used to live in. Not literally, but somebody in their condition, in their income range, could have lived in your house. I'm in one of those houses, and now I live in a house that I could sell for close to $1 million, right? And so we are losing affordable housing left and right because of this downward pressure. And if we don't, so unfortunately, we've lost so much affordable housing, naturally occurring affordable housing, that we've got to backfill. We've got to backfill, and it's extremely expensive to backfill that affordable housing to make up for what used to exist.
Right. And I think, when we talk about housing, obviously, homeless folks, houseless folks, we've got a lot of them. There's a lot of opinions on what we should do with these folks that are out there living on the streets. What's been your experience or what's something you're proud of, I guess, that the city's done to move forward in that sector?
So let's say I ran for council wanting to talk about transportation. And homelessness fell into my lap. Like, I got drugged down to the block and confronted with that. And so it became, it has become more of a key issue to me over time. So in the beginning, I would kind of butt up against the former city manager he's like, that's not our job. Homelessness is not our job. County gets money for it, not our job, not our job. And I kept saying, but we're the ones that people think it's our job. Maybe we don't get the money from the state. Maybe we don't have the infrastructure built for it, but people think it's the city's job. And they don't go and yell at the county. They come and yell at the city when they see homelessness.
Right.
And he started to kind of, his evolution, around the time, we did a police funding measure 8-ish years ago. It was done in conjunction with the Van Mall North annexation when we went up and annexed Home Depot and Costco. I'm like, city manager, we're saying we're hiring police to do X. We want to be able to hire police to do X. And we're going to get judged on whether we're successful, not based on whether we do X, but on homelessness. And it's going to be our jobs. Like, if we don't deal with homelessness, and it took a while, but he finally came around. So proud that we did Safe Stays. I mean, let's go back. I'm proud we tried with the navigation center. We tried. I'm proud that we did Talking Trash because Albuquerque, New Mexico, the mayor of Albuquerque, New Mexico was getting all sorts of publicity about his version of Talking Trash. And I'm like, well, what are we? I'm bringing back, and he says, oh, we are doing it. Okay, so I'm proud that we're doing things there. Again, we learn. We're a learning organization. So we learn through the navigation center. And out the other side of that came Safe State Communities, which have been hugely successful in helping people stabilize. And I'm very proud that we're taking the next step with a bridge shelter. So these won't solve homelessness, but they at least, I think, are a healthier pathway forward than, say, our neighbors to the south, who are, I know a few folks over there, and so there's this proposal to put in a new homeless shelter in the Pearl District, and there's a lot of people losing their cookies over it, because Pearl District's not a cheap place.
Right.
But so I'm, yes, you do, but it's a traditional homeless shelter, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, everybody gets kicked out the door. So shove everybody back out on the street, and people are going to be like, you've not done anything. You've not done anything. And
Right.
so our model that we are not kicking people out, so we can provide that better stability. One, we're not putting an impact on the community, because with the navigation center, we did just the opposite. We brought them in during the day, and then we kicked them out at night. So we have this model now where people are there, and given that stability to be able to move, to begin rebuilding their lives and moving.
And are they getting wraparound service here? We got social workers and drug counselors, and are we wrapping around the services in that location?
Do we have enough? No, but yes. We've built a team. Jamie Spinelli has built a great team at the city, where we're doing work alongside the traditional providers, Share, Community Services Northwest, and different things. So there's, yes, we need more. That's another place.
Sure. And is the city partnering with or paying money out to these nonprofits, or how does that faction? And do you feel like maybe sometimes it wouldn't be better if there was just a department of, maybe a department of homelessness that did all that and was all funded through the government, as opposed to having 25 nonprofits work different portions of the sector?
That's a great question. I think that this balance where we have outreach workers working alongside, there's things that a third party can do in execution that we're unable to do. We have a lot more due process hurdles that we have to jump through in order to get things done. So, I'm going to shut up now.
So, I'll move on to another piece of that. So I guess another piece of that puzzle, or some criticism that's you often hear, is that we roll the welcome mat out, essentially, and so that increases the homeless population because we offer so many excellent services for them. What do you say to that argument?
You've just lost housing. Just lost housing. Rug pulled out from underneath you. Do you want to go to a new city and learn new systems and new structures or are you going to grab hold of what you already know? 80-some% grab hold of what they know.
Have you heard much about other cities, and I don't mean cities around Vancouver specifically, not in Clark County cities, but in other states, busing their homeless to the Pacific Northwest?
Now, here's something that we will do as well. You're working with somebody, and they say, "Well, I've got a sister in California, well, when's the last time you talked to your sister? It's been a while. So why don't we reach out to your sister? And the sister says, okay, you can come live with me. Guess what? We're going to buy the bus ticket.
Fair.
Right? If we can reunite somebody into stability, into a different support structure, we're going to do that. There is, we've had people sent to Vancouver. They weren't necessarily from outside of Clark County. But they're.
And so I guess with that said, because I was going to get there eventually, I think, but what type of coalition could be had? Do you feel like there's too many entities maybe crossing over and doing? If we could just be maybe like the Clark County Homeless Coalition, perhaps.
We're trying. We're trying.
Yeah.
It's baby steps.
It seems like
but we're trying with
right.
the Indian Community Homeless Organization that's run by the county. It's elected officials. We're still figuring it all out. Different cities, different jurisdictions in Clark County have different philosophies. We're trying to work through that, trying to figure out how we can have some tough conversations and come to some pathways forward. It's not easy because we are, each of the communities in Clark County is different, has different thoughts and outlooks on life. So it's a struggle, but if you go back 5 years, everybody in Clark County just thought it was a Vancouver problem.
Sure.
And now at least we get more people understanding it's a problem in all of our communities. So
has homelessness has it gotten worse in the last 5 years?
Yeah.
Have we seen an increase in?
Oh yeah, the point in time count keeps going up. Right? Every year the point in time count, and I think it was 5% this year. So it keeps going up, and because we go back to we're not building enough housing. Right.
Right.
At any income level, we're not building enough housing. And if we really
right, I mean, if you were working 2 full-time jobs at even the state's minimum wage, it's hard to find a place to live.
I was shocked. I know this conceptually, but I've been helping somebody, and I was over there. I saw a lease renewal notice, and this is definitely something I would call this apartment complex naturally occurring low-income housing. Like,
sure, I got
old,
you.
2-bedroom, 1 bath. If a lease was signed, it was $1,700 a month.
Right, most of these places want like 2.5 times the rent and income.
And if you didn't
Something
sign
like that.
a lease, it was $2,100 a month. And so 3 people sharing a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment in order to try and be able to survive with that. That's
it's crazy, right? I mean, and what do we, as folks obviously that care deeply about this community and the people that live in it and the quality of life, it's hard sometimes, right? It's hard to really sit and think about, because for me, I know I'll just, I think about it constantly, and there's no one answer to figure everyone's situation out.
No.
And so I think you see a lot of people talk about the homeless situation, and they're drug addicts. They're they need to be in jail. We need to sweep them off. The streets. Criminalizing homelessness. I have trouble, I guess, grasping that lack of empathy and the nuanced understanding of each individual out there is completely different. And knowing that if you didn't have any family and you lost your job, or perhaps hurt your back on the job, and your L&I has run out, and now all of a sudden you go down this rabbit hole. There's so many situations out there. What do you say to people that want to sweep them up, throw them in the jail, and lock away the key and call it good?
Even more expensive. It's even more expensive. I mean, we don't have jail space. We need to figure out our jail situation. Jail is, when the county comes forward with a proposal on a new jail, it is going to be minimum $100 million. And that's not going to significantly increase capacity of the jail. And the cost to keep somebody locked up is just enormous. And the jail needs wraparound services, right? So you still need the wraparound services. And then now somebody's got the arrest record, and they get out and they can't find stability because they have to check that they spent time in jail. And so somebody doesn't want to rent to them, somebody doesn't want to give them a job. So it just reiterates a cycle. And the key thing is, what we're doing right now is expensive, but it's less expensive than other alternatives, and it's doing something, right? And it has outcomes that allow people to start to move forward. And so we're finding once people have stabilized through our safe state communities, there's a big chunk of them that are able to go into housing without being permanently supportive housing. And when this narrative started to take hold, this realization started to take hold, it allowed a new partnership to form with Council for the Homeless and Vancouver Housing Authority to rethink where can people go after a safe state community, and it opened up a lot more opportunities because now the people coming out of safe states have stabilized. They now know what it's like to live in community, and they're ready to go out and go into a private apartment where they can lock the door. And because that's key is, the other thing is our jails are not excited about helping people detox. They don't have the capacity to help people detox.
Sure, and I don't know if a lot of people know this. Maybe people do, maybe they don't. But detoxing from alcohol can be deadly.
Yeah.
Like it's a serious piece. You just can't take somebody who's a lifetime chronic alcoholic and put them in a room and with a bucket of water and let them sit. I mean, they're physically die.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it's not as simple as just don't give them anything to drink. It needs direct medical management with medications.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you spent a lot of time out in the homeless community. You're pretty familiar with kind of what's going on out there. What do you find the leading cause of homelessness is in our area?
Lack of housing, right? Can't afford to live inside. Okay, so let's go back to these core. So number one, can't afford to live inside. By far, way out there. Can't afford to live inside.
Do these folks have jobs?
Some do, but some don't, because now you're living outside.
Sure.
And where are you going to shower? Where are you going to get ready to go to work? What are you going to do with your stuff while you're gone during the day? So once you've fallen into homelessness, the barriers. So yeah, do some people go outside with a addiction? For sure, some people go outside with addiction. But then we've got to go back even further and go, why did they have that addiction, and start looking at societal issues that caused them trauma. I remember, I'm sort of wandering around here. Jamie Spinelli, our homeless service coordinator, when she was still an outreach worker, we were talking about the block, and she used to be a CASA worker before she became a outreach worker. And that's court-appointed special advocates, so kids who enter the foster care system. She's like, some of my kids are living in the block, because kids go into the foster care system and we do not support them, right? So, okay, so they're dealing with past trauma, and they've developed a habit. Something went wrong during puberty, and the brain chemicals didn't function right. Don't function right anymore. So yes, people can go outside with mental health and with drug addiction, or an addiction of some type. But most people go outside because they lost housing. And then once they get outside, now they're living in trauma. And now, if you didn't go outside with a mental health issue, now you've got one. And you're self-medicating, using drugs in order to try and deal with that. So people see people outside with these addictions, with these mental health issues, and they're like, they're a bad person. They did something bad, and before they went outside, they're out there because of that. But the vast majority of them out there are out there because they lost housing, and then to deal with the fact they're now outside, then they develop their addiction and mental health issues.
Right. Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. I wouldn't argue that point with you at all. But a lot of people do, right? Obviously. So, yeah. I mean, I guess if you had a magic wand and you could just fix, homelessness tomorrow, what would be the magic wand touch? What would it take to end it?
Well, multiple things: housing, services. Because you can't. Back to the tension in the homelessness community and the service provider community is, what is the pathway? And there is one philosophy, is we all believe in housing first, but our definitions of housing first are a spectrum. So I believe in housing first, that is, come inside, and then we're going to have these services around you and help you walk through the challenges you have. There are other people whose housing first is, here's an apartment, we'll come check on you. Go in, lock the door, and overdose, and now they're not outside where somebody sees that they've overdosed. Now they're behind a closed door, and we don't find them for a week. And so it's got to be, people need to learn how to live in community again, have to be stable enough that they can, when we give them a key, we can feel more confident that they're not going to go inside because now they're lonely, they're inside, they're isolated, they're lonely, and so they deal with that new trauma by overdosing.
Right. Yeah.
There's no.
It's a tough,
There is no magic wand.
There's no magic wand, unless there really was a magic wand, and then we just say no more homelessness.
Right. Exactly.
Everybody's good.
Exactly.
All right, so I guess we'll start wrapping this up here. I could talk to you for hours. I mean, we could keep this going for a long time. But I guess I'd be curious to know, in the next 6 months, what would you like to accomplish on the council, and then lastly to that, just kind of what's your vision, general vision for Vancouver? Say when you fast forward to 10 years from now, what would you like to see?
So I ran for a third term for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's our comprehensive plan. And that will be done within the next 6 months. And so that is the most important thing to me, because we have got to allow more opportunities for housing within our city. And it's going to be uncomfortable. And I am sure when it comes to the public hearings over the comprehensive plan, we are going to have packed rooms of really angry and frustrated people.
Was that from the NIMBY situation?
Let's not be so harsh. People who realize that they have this vision of what they bought into, and we're going to be telling them the future is different, and that's a very scary future. At the same time, so I talked about being here in my 20s, and Vancouver was not a fun place to be as a 20-something. There was nothing to do on this side of the river. There was a sports bar owned by Kermit Washington called Hoops, and that was the one cool thing we had going for us in Vancouver. But there was nothing in Vancouver. And so a driving force for me has always been, I want a city where somebody's graduating high school in Vancouver goes, I wouldn't mind staying.
Sure.
There's a lot of fun things to do here. I can get around. I don't have to be car dependent, because owning a car is flipping expensive. I can get to activities. I can get to the store. I can get to a coffee shop. I can get to a gym. I can get to the things I need. I can get to my job, and they feel like it's a place that is time well spent. And the great thing is, the research has shown that people who are retiring, who are baby boomers, they all love the same kind of things, because it's fun to be able to walk to a coffee shop. It's and find a place where you can still be socially connected with your community, when you're car dependent and you lose the ability to drive, and now you're stuck at home, isolated, lonely. And so that isn't a 10-year vision. Honestly, it's not a 10-year vision. That's 20, 30, 40 years down the road before my kind of vision for Vancouver starts to really happen. Because and that's the other thing. With the comprehensive plan, people are going to see a map, and they're going to see somebody can do what in the property next door to me, and they're going to be like, no. And the reality is, that's not going to happen tomorrow.
Right. And I don't use the term NIMBY necessarily to be, derogatory or mean. I think it's something that we all have in some regards, and it could be towards any issue, like I want this, but they don't want that. And I'm like, well, you can do it, but just do it over there. I think we all have some sense of that in regard. So not using it as a negative term, but it is the.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I have this joke that I can make any progressive conservative just like that. I go after whatever it is that they hold dear as a personal privilege, right? Take away a progressive's personal privilege, and they're going to become conservative just like that. So there's issues for all of us.
Sure.
There's issues for all of us.
Absolutely.
That you're going to do what, and all of a sudden we're going to go into defensive mode. So.
Right. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been great. Hopefully it turns out well for the listeners and the viewers out there. For those watching, if I look a little red on your screen, just turn your brightness down perhaps. But
Great.
Ty,
Thank you,
man.
Graham.
I appreciate you. I'll see you again soon, and maybe we'll have to have you on again because, I'd like to kind of see how things progress. Yeah. But thanks again. I'll see you soon, too, I'm sure.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Yeah. All right, that does it for part 2 of my conversation with Councilmember Ty Stober. We covered growth, bridges, housing, and just about everything else short of a Bigfoot sighting. My thanks to Ty for joining me and to you for tuning in. If you found this discussion valuable, share it with a friend, leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And as always, thank you for being a part of Evergreen Perspective. I'm Ben Chrisley, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time.